My son told me to stay out of his marriage, so I did. I stayed out of everything I paid for, including the house I gave them as a wedding gift. What happened next? Well, they weren't ready for that. Before we begin, thank you for listening to this story. If this story speaks to you, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I read every single one. Now, let me tell you what happens when a father reclaims his name. I gave that boy everything. Not just the big things, the food, the roof, the education. I gave him my back, my weekends, my prayers. I gave him my 30s, my 40s, and all the peace I never got back. His mama left when he was 5. Said she needed to find herself. She's still looking, I guess. But Michael was my entire reason. I worked double shifts at the steel mill, breathing in dust and praying that my lungs would hold up just long enough to get through one more shift. And when I came home, I made dinner from scratch, helped him with homework, listened to him tell me about the bullies at school and how he wanted to build skyscrapers when he grew up. We used to dream together, me and him. I'd tell him, son, one day we're gonna get us a house with a real garage. One where I can teach you to work on cars. And he'd say, I'm gonna be rich one day and buy you one with a workshop. I smiled every time, even when my hands were too sore to hold a wrench. When I bought my first house at 45, you would have thought I won the lottery. A little brick rancher with aluminum siding and a detached garage, but it was mine. I planted oak trees in the front yard and named each one after a struggle I survived: layoffs, loneliness, betrayal, bankruptcy. They grew anyway, just like I did. By the time Michael was 32, he was doing well. Worked at some consulting firm downtown, talked about market penetration and growth strategies. I didn't understand half of it, but I always asked questions. I stayed involved. When he brought home Ashley, I smiled and grilled steaks on the back patio. She was polished, hair always perfect, clothes that looked expensive. She spoke with a tone like every conversation was a business meeting. I didn't mind it. I figured it was just her style. I offered to help with wedding planning. She declined politely but firmly, so I didn't push. When they got married, I gave them the house. Not a check, not a loan. The house, that little brick sanctuary I worked my whole damn life for. I'd already moved into a small apartment closer to work. I didn't need much anymore. I wanted them to have something real, something safe, something solid. Start your life in a place built on sacrifice, I told them. They both smiled. Ashley said thank you, but it was quick, rehearsed, like she'd said it a dozen times that day. I chalked it up to wedding nerves. At first, everything seemed normal. I'd drop off leftovers every now and then. I'd get photos of their redecorating. Then the communication slowed. First, it was days without calls. Then weeks. I'd call and Michael would answer with that distracted voice, the one people use when they're not alone. I started noticing things. Like how every picture they posted said, finally built our dream space, or, started from the bottom, now look. I wasn't mentioned once. I let it go. Thought maybe they were just adjusting to married life. Then came the day I brought over a apple pie. I didn't tell them I was coming. I just baked it and went. Apple pie was always Michael's favorite. Ever since he was a boy, he'd asked for it on every birthday, every first day of school, every rough day. He once said it was better than anything in the world, even video games. I remembered that while I rolled out the crust, sprinkling cinnamon over the apples. I remember thinking maybe this would reconnect us. I got to the house, my house, and knocked. Michael opened the door halfway. Not wide, not welcoming. Just halfway. We've talked about this, Dad, he said. I blinked. Talked about what, son? You can't just pop up. Ashley and I, we have boundaries. A schedule. That word, boundaries. I could have spit. I hadn't raised him with guilt, hadn't hovered like those TV dads. I showed up maybe once every few weeks, always with food, always with a smile. Before I could respond, I heard her voice behind him. "Honestly, Michael, we've been thinking about changing the locks." She said it like she was asking for the weather report. Cool. Flat. And then she laughed. Laughed. He laughed too. My boy, the one I held through night fevers and middle school heartbreak, he chuckled like she'd said something clever. And then he turned back to me and said, "We're good, Dad." Thanks, though. The door closed. Just like that. I stood there holding that pie like an idiot. My arms were stiff. I felt like a delivery man. No hug, no "how are you?" Just dismissed. Erased. I walked back to my truck. The air was warm. The pie steamed against the foil like it didn't know it was unwanted. I sat behind the wheel and stared at that house. The oak trees were still growing, but they weren't mine anymore. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Ashley leaning over Michael's shoulder, showing him something on her phone. They both laughed again. That laugh used to be my favorite sound in the world. It used to mean joy, safety, home. But now it sounded like a lock turning from the inside, like a door closing that I paid for. I didn't cry. I didn't cuss. I went home. I put the pie in the fridge. I poured myself some coffee, and then I walked into my bedroom, opened my file cabinet, and pulled out the deed. They thought I was just a guest in that house. They forgot who built it, and I was about to remind them. Quietly, legally, completely. I didn't touch that pie for days. Every time I opened the fridge, it sat there on the second shelf like it was waiting for me to admit I'd been played. Like it knew it wasn't just dessert anymore. It was evidence, a symbol of everything I gave that got laughed at, mocked, forgotten. I couldn't bring myself to throw it out. That's how deep it cut. But I didn't cry. You reach a point in life where tears feel like a luxury, like a younger man's game. When you've buried people, worked overtime while sick, and stayed strong while folks cracked around you, you learn to turn pain into silence. Not weakness. Silence. The kind that makes people uncomfortable because they don't know what's coming next. I sat at my table for hours that night, flipping through the same manila folder I hadn't opened since Michael's wedding. It held every important piece of paper I had, birth certificates, insurance policies, and at the very back, tucked behind a plastic sleeve, the deed. Not just any deed. The deed. The house on Maple Street wasn't just a building. It was my life in brick and mortar. Every nail in that place was paid for in hours of my life I'll never get back, working overtime, skipping lunch to save money, missing softball games to work weekends. That house was my lungs, my back, and my sacrifices poured into one address. When Michael and Ashley got married, I gifted it to them, but I didn't do it blind. I had a clause added. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense man named Robert, told me, if you're giving away something this big, you keep your parachute. So we included it. A line so small you'd miss it if you were careless. Gift is subject to continued familial relationship and respect. In the event of abuse, alienation, or defamation of grantor, property may revert back to original owner upon legal notification. I never thought I'd use it. But that night, when Michael said, "This isn't your house anymore," and Ashley joked about changing the locks, something snapped. Not just emotionally, logically. They didn't just disrespect me. They declared themselves sole authors of something I wrote the first draft of. They wanted the benefits of my labor without the burden of my presence. A house without the man who bled for it. A legacy without the name. No. I was done begging to be seen in the frame. I was about to remove the frame altogether. I laid out everything on the dining table. Printed every receipt, every maintenance invoice, every property tax bill, proof of ownership from day one. Then I drafted a legal notice, intent to reclaim title under conditional clause. I didn't rush. I read it 3 times. Called Robert. He answered on the first ring. "You sure?" he asked. "As sure as I was when I gave it to him," I said. "Then let's go to war quietly." He smiled. I didn't. 3 days later, I sent the notice to the county registrar. Certified, overnight, legally binding. 1 to Michael, 1 to Ashley, 1 posted directly on the front door of the house I bled to buy. I heard nothing. No text, no call, no knock at the door. Just silence. Until 5 days later, when my phone rang. Blocked number. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "Dad, what the hell is this?" Michael's voice was clipped, almost shaking. "What's what?" "There's a notice on our door saying we have 30 days to vacate." "Are you serious?" "It's not your door," I said calmly. "It's mine." His silence crackled on the other end. "You gave us that house, Dad. As a gift." "I gave it to the man I raised. The one who knew better than to laugh at his father on the porch he built." Ashley didn't mean anything by that. She meant it when she said she was changing the locks. That was enough. He exhaled hard. "You're punishing us over a joke." "I'm reclaiming my name before y'all erase it entirely." A long pause. "Do you know how this makes us look?" I almost laughed. "Boy, you worried about how you look. You should be worried about how you treated me." He hung up. No goodbye, just a click. The next morning, Ashley posted some slick video online, one of her crying into the camera about boundaries and respect and how her husband's father was trying to ruin their marriage. She never said my name, never mentioned the house, just enough crocodile tears and soft piano music to stir up sympathy. But the internet isn't as dumb as she thinks. People started piecing it together. A few folks reposted the wedding pics, the captions claiming they built everything from scratch. One woman even dug up a Facebook post I made the day I gave them the house. She quoted me word for word. "I pray this home gives you the peace I never had. Build wisely." That went viral. Her little video got buried under comments like, "Y'all erased that man's whole name," and, "He gave you a house and you mocked him," and, "Fathers are not disposable." She tried deleting it. Then she went private. I didn't say a word. I just waited. Meanwhile, the clock ticked. 25 days left. Then 20, then 15. No calls, no apologies, just whispers. And every time I opened that fridge and saw that pie, I thought, they still think this is a negotiation. But it wasn't. It was already done. And they were running out of time. 7 days left. That's all they had. And they didn't even know it. Or maybe they did, and they were just pretending they didn't. That's how some people cope with consequences, they ignore them until they show up in the form of a sheriff with a clipboard. I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I wasn't waiting for Michael to come to his senses or for Ashley to fake tears at my door. I'd already given them more grace than they ever earned. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about removal. Quiet, legal, final removal. Still, I'll admit this part wasn't easy. You don't raise someone for 30 years, sacrifice for them, bury your whole damn youth in their future, and then celebrate taking something back. There's no joy in that, only clarity. And sometimes clarity cuts deeper than hate. On the 7th day, I went to church. Sat in my usual spot, third pew from the front, left side, where the morning light hits the stained glass windows just enough to make the dust sparkle. I didn't pray for strength. Already had it. I prayed for peace. Not for me, for Michael. Because after this, there would be no going back. I walked out before the benediction. I didn't want handshakes. I didn't want pity. I just wanted silence. When I got home, I found the voicemail. It was from Robert. Judge signed the ruling. Title reversion is final. The house is legally yours again, Walter. They have 3 days to vacate or they'll be removed by force. He didn't say it cold. Robert's a bulldog in court but soft in spirit. I could hear the sympathy in his voice. He knew this wasn't just paperwork. It was blood work. I didn't listen to the rest. I knew what came next. The countdown had become official. 3 days. The next morning, I took a slow walk through my apartment. No music, just the sound of my boots on linoleum. I passed by the shelf where I keep my photo albums. My fingers hovered over the spines. I almost pulled one down, Michael's high school graduation, the look in his eyes when I handed him his first toolbox. He hugged me so tight that day I couldn't breathe. But I didn't open it. I wasn't in the mood to mourn someone still breathing. I made coffee instead. Black. No sugar. Then I opened Facebook. Not for them. For me. I typed, "Some people forget the foundation they're standing on until it moves." No names. No shade. Just truth. 47 likes, 12 comments, all from men I'd known for decades. Men who had raised children into strangers. Men who had paid rent on respect and got evicted anyway. One comment said, "Say it louder, Walter." Another just said, "I feel this." Later that afternoon, I went to the bank. I requested a full printout of the utilities and property maintenance account still in my name. The house had been theirs in theory, but I never took my name off the records. I'd kept paying the property insurance. I knew Ashley didn't notice. Those kinds of women never ask who's behind the curtain as long as the lights stay on. The clerk gave me a folder an inch thick. I smiled. Back home, I flipped through it all. Dates, amounts, auto deductions, my generosity printed in black ink. Michael called that night. Not from his number, it was a new line, one I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened, I heard the voice of a man I didn't recognize either. "Dad, I know you're mad. I know we made mistakes, but can we please talk before this goes too far?" Too far. He must have thought this was step one. I had just started. Like I hadn't been sitting on this decision since the first time he closed that door in my face. I didn't call back. 2 days left. Ashley called next. I didn't answer. She texted instead. "You're hurting your son more than you realize. You're tearing this family apart. People are talking." I typed a reply. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Then I sent one message, "I stayed out of your marriage like I was told. Now stay out of my house." Blocked her after that. I didn't need to see whatever performative meltdown she had planned next. 1 day left. Robert called again. He said the sheriff had already been scheduled to oversee the transition. He asked if I wanted to be there when the locks were changed. I said, "No. I've already seen enough." That night, I cooked dinner. Not takeout, not leftovers, a full spread. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, cornbread. The kind of meal that smells like roots and redemption. The kind I used to make when Michael came home from college. I didn't do it to celebrate. I did it because I needed to remember who I was before they tried to rewrite me. I ate alone, quietly, gratefully. Then I went to the fridge, opened the door, and took out the pie. It was still there, covered in foil, slightly wilted. I warmed it up, sat down at the table, took one bite, and it tasted just like I remembered. Sweet. Satisfying. The morning came quietly. I woke before the sun touched the blinds. My body always knows. Doesn't matter how long I sleep, on days like that, I just wake fully alert, ready. No music, no phone, Just me and the hum of the refrigerator and the whisper of God saying, "This is the day it ends." I didn't plan to be at the house. I told Robert that already. I wanted nothing to do with the actual handover. I'd signed the paperwork. I'd set it in motion. My name was back on the deed. The house was mine again. I didn't need to watch anyone pack a box. I didn't want to hear a single excuse. I didn't want to see Michael's eyes, not if they weren't going to be the ones I remembered. So I stayed home, made coffee the old way, not from a machine, not from a pod. I boiled it in a pot like I used to when I couldn't afford filters. And while it brewed, I stood in the kitchen and watched the light creep across the counter. And I thought, today, I cut the cord. Then there was a knock. At first, I thought it was the sheriff. Maybe someone dropping off final paperwork. But when I looked through the peephole and saw her, I almost closed the door again without thinking. Ashley. On my porch. Holding a little to-go cup of coffee like it meant something. I didn't open the door right away. I let her knock again. I needed her to feel what it's like to be on the outside. Not invited, not welcomed, just tolerated. When I finally opened it, I didn't bother with greetings. She tried to smile. She wore those oversized sunglasses that women wear when they want to look dramatic in public. Her hair was pulled back tight, but not in a cute way, in a rushed, anxious, I didn't sleep kind of way. "I just want to talk," she said, soft as sugar she never gave me. I didn't step aside. "Say it from there." "Please," she tried again. "Just 5 minutes." I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just crossed my arms and leaned against the door frame like I had all the time in the world. She exhaled like she was the one being wronged. "We didn't mean to disrespect you," she said. "It was just boundaries, you know." I stared at her. I wanted her to say it with her whole chest like she did the day she joked about changing my locks, but she couldn't because today the locks weren't a joke anymore. "You called me a guest in my own home," I said, and laughed while doing it. "That wasn't what I." "It was." I cut her off. "Don't lie now. You knew exactly what you were doing. You wanted me erased. Quietly, safely, like old furniture no one wants to get rid of in front of company." She looked away. "You didn't just ignore me," I continued. "You dishonored me. You took what I bled for, smiled for the camera, and made me the background noise." She swallowed. Then she said something she shouldn't have. "Michael didn't mean any of this." That's when the fire rose in me. "No," I said. "So when he looked me in the face and said this wasn't my home anymore? When he stood beside you like a shadow and watched you belittle me? When he let you post photos calling that house your dream without a single word of credit to the man who paid for the foundation? That wasn't his choice." She went quiet like someone slapped her without touching her. "You don't get to come here and pretend this was an accident. You knew what you were doing. You wanted me gone. Well, now you got it. Congratulations." Her lip trembled. That performative tremble women like her master so well. "You're really going to make us homeless?" I scoffed. "Homeless? Please. You've got followers, sponsors, your family. You've got options. What you don't have is my house anymore." "I built a brand around that kitchen," she snapped. "And I built the kitchen," I said coldly. "Before you ever knew what a ring light was." She tried again. "People are talking, Walter. You're ruining our image. Do you care about how this affects Michael's job? His reputation?" I laughed then. Not loud, just enough to let her know how pathetic it sounded. "Did he care about my dignity?" I asked. "My image when he shut me out of the house I gave him?" She didn't answer. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Made sure she couldn't even breathe inside my space. I leaned in close. "You should have read the clause," I said. It was right there. Small print. The same way y'all made me small in my own home. She finally broke. Not all the way, but her eyes welled up and for a second she looked like someone who finally saw the train coming. Too late to move. Then she said something weak, something desperate. What do we tell the neighbors? I smiled wide this time. Tell them the truth, I said. Tell them the house went back to the one who never left it. She walked off then. No more tears, no more begging, just quiet footsteps and shame. The same shame she tried to hand me on a silver platter 6 months ago when I stood on my porch with apple pie and a heart full of love. I watched her drive away. No honk, no wave, just gone. Robert texted at 10:06 a.m., they're out. Keys collected, locks changed, property cleared. All yours. I didn't reply. I just sat down at my kitchen table and looked at my hands. The same hands that welded steel, taught Michael to throw a football, planted oak trees, and signed the paper that took back everything they thought I forgot how to claim. I wasn't angry anymore. I was sovereign. And that silence, that was the sound of a patriarch taking back his name. The day after the eviction, the neighborhood group chat exploded. I wasn't even on it, but my neighbor Frank from across the street sent me screenshots all morning. There was one from a woman named Brittany who lived 2 houses down from Maple Street. Did y'all see the sheriff out there? What happened? Then someone else chimed in, I thought they owned that place. Ashley always said it was her dream home. Then the story started spilling out. Apparently Michael and Ashley didn't tell anyone what was going on. No notice, no warning. Just left the house in silence while the locksmith changed the bolts. No truck, no help, just 2 people walking out of a life they pretended to build, carrying boxes they thought they were entitled to. By 3 p.m., it was online. A small local blog posted a write-up, young entrepreneur couple evicted from historic family home in quiet legal dispute. They didn't mention my name, but they didn't need to. In the comments, people were already digging. Someone found the wedding photos from 4 years ago, me in my good suit, handing them a small wooden box tied with ribbon. Inside had been the keys and a handwritten note to my son and his new bride. I hope this home holds the kind of peace I never had. May you build without forgetting who laid the first brick. It had gone semi-viral at the time. People said it made them cry. That post resurfaced, and when it did, everything changed. People weren't mad at me, they were mad at them. One comment said, y'all erased the man who gave you the roof. Another, he built that home and they turned him into a guest. Another, fathers are not ornamental. They are the foundation. I didn't comment. I didn't share. I didn't say a word. But I watched. Watched as Ashley locked her social media. Watched as Michael's job quietly removed his photo from their website's homepage. Watched as the house sat still on Maple Street. Quiet now. Finally peaceful. I went there once. Just once. I parked across the street and sat in my truck with the engine off. It was the same house, but it felt different. Maybe because for the first time in years, it didn't carry the sound of laughter that didn't belong to me. It didn't have a porch full of strangers or the smell of food I didn't cook. It just existed. Waiting. 2 days later, Michael called. This time, he didn't use a blocked number. I knew it was him. I let it ring twice before picking up. His voice was dry, flat, not angry anymore, just hollow. Hi. That was all he said. Hi, I said back. I just wanted to say I saw the posts. A pause. Dad, everything's kind of falling apart right now. I didn't answer. Ashley's blaming me. Her family's disappointed. I didn't answer. He exhaled. You really didn't have to go that far. That made me blink. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Michael, I said, calm as glass. I didn't go far. I went home. Silence again. You embarrassed us, he whispered. No, I said, you embarrassed me. I just made it legal. He didn't speak after that. I don't know if he expected tears or softness or for me to fold like I used to when he scraped his knee and cried until I picked him up. But this wasn't the same boy, and I wasn't the same father. Not anymore. You told me to stay out of your marriage, I continued. So I stayed out of everything tied to it. That includes the house, the bank transfers, and my silence. You don't get to treat me like a stranger and keep my name on your foundation. He finally said it. I'm sorry. It didn't land the way he thought it would. Not because it wasn't overdue, but because it was empty. He didn't call me when the lawyer's letters came. He didn't defend me when Ashley laughed. He didn't check on me when I stopped coming around. He only came to say sorry when the internet decided I was right. And that's not an apology. That's PR. I didn't accept it. I didn't reject it. I just said, thank you. Then I hung up, because some doors don't need to be slammed. They just need to be closed. Later that evening, I made dinner again. Something simple, spaghetti and meatballs, some garlic bread on the side. I ate in silence. No TV, no music, just the hum of peace. And after dinner, I pulled out a photo from an old shoebox. Michael at 10 years old, sitting in my truck with his arms full of baseball gear I bought from 3 different stores because we couldn't afford everything in one trip. I looked at that boy for a long time. Then I put the photo away because I had mourned him already. The house sat empty for 2 weeks. No curtains, no laughter, no porch lights flicking on at dusk, just silence, like the building itself was holding its breath after everything it had witnessed. After all the prayers, the betrayals, the muffled arguments behind bathroom doors, the apple pie that never made it past the threshold, the house was resting. I didn't rush to fill it. I didn't list it online or call any real estate friends. I needed time to let go of what it used to be, time to remember who I was before I handed the keys to someone who couldn't be bothered to say thank you. People kept asking what I was going to do with it. Are you moving back in, Walter? You should rent it out. Make some money back. One neighbor, half whispering, said, I'd burn it down if I were you, just for peace. But peace doesn't come from fire. It comes from forgiveness, not for them, for me. And forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means I'm done carrying what you tried to bury me under. So one morning, I got in my truck and drove across town. Not to Maple Street, to a quiet little community center tucked between a laundromat and an auto repair shop. It wasn't much, but the sign out front had caught my eye weeks ago, veterans rise when they know they're safe. Inside, I met a man named Carlos. He ran the place with the kind of exhaustion only single fathers know. He had a soft voice and calloused hands, always fixing something, always watching everything at once. He had 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, ages 6, 8, and 10, living in a 2-bedroom apartment across town that leaked when it rained. I didn't ask for his story, but he gave it anyway. Not because he was looking for help, but because sometimes people like us don't get asked how we're doing. And when we finally are, the truth just spills out. I went home, pulled the deed from my drawer, and called Robert. I found who it belongs to, I said. He didn't even ask if I was sure. The papers were signed 3 days later. I didn't give them the house the same way I gave it to Michael. No party, no pictures, no ribbon, just a firm handshake and a small box with 2 keys and a note. Carlos, build gently. Rise loudly. Make it a home where no one ever feels like a guest. Walter. I didn't go with them the day they moved in. I didn't need to. I had already made peace with the house. It was no longer a symbol of what I lost. It was a tool I had reclaimed and passed forward. The next week, I got a card in the mail, handwritten in blue ink. Inside it said, "My son asked if the man who gave us the house used to be a superhero. I told him yes, because only superheroes can take pain and turn it into a front porch full of hope." I put that card on my fridge right next to a magnet that says, "Protect your peace like it pays the rent." One night, about 2 weeks after the new family moved in, I finally did something I hadn't done since the day I stood on that porch with pie in my hands. I walked to the shelf and pulled out the old photo album, the one with Michael in it. The baby pictures, his third-grade science fair, the prom tux I helped him pick out because we couldn't afford a tailor, college graduation, his wedding, all of it. I sat with those photos for hours. I cried, but not like people cry in movies. No loud sobs, no shaking hands, just tears, soft and steady, like the body was finally letting go of a weight it had carried in secret for too long. I didn't cry for Michael. I cried for the man I used to be, the one who kept believing that love meant losing yourself, that sacrifice meant silence, that giving meant disappearing. And when the tears dried, I stood up, closed the album, and slid it back into the drawer. Not because I was erasing him, but because I no longer needed proof that I had done my part. The next morning, I made myself a big breakfast, eggs, hash browns, bacon, the whole thing. I played classic rock loud and sang along while I cooked. And when I sat down to eat, I looked out the window and whispered a quiet prayer. "Thank you, Lord, for finally teaching me that boundaries are holy, too." Later that afternoon, I walked past Maple Street. Not on purpose, just part of my daily walk. Carlos's daughter was on the porch, reading a book. She looked up and smiled so big you'd think I was Santa. "You the house man?" she yelled. I laughed. "I suppose I am." "Thank you for my room," she said, waving. Her father came to the door and smiled too, a quiet kind of smile, the kind that says, "I'm building something, and, don't worry, I got this." And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't a story about a house being taken back. This was a story about a man finally remembering he never needed permission to take up space. They told me I was just a guest, but now I'm the foundation. And I ain't leaving. Ever. 6 months later, I got another unexpected call. It was Michael again, but this time his voice was different. Quieter. More genuine. "Dad, I've been going to counseling," he said without preamble. "Ashley and we're getting divorced." I didn't say I was sorry. I didn't say I was glad. I just listened. I've been thinking about that day with the pie. And the house. And how we treated you. His voice cracked a little. I was so caught up in trying to impress her, in trying to be this person she wanted me to be, that I forgot who raised me. I sat down in my recliner, still listening. "I know I can't fix what I did. I know I hurt you in ways that probably can't be undone. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see how wrong I was." There was a long pause. "I don't expect forgiveness," he continued. "I don't expect anything. I wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost. Not just the house, you. I lost my father because I was too proud and too stupid to see what was right in front of me." I sat there for a long time, listening to him breathe on the other end of the line. Part of me wanted to hang up. Part of me wanted to tell him it was too late. But mostly, I was just tired. "Where are you living now?" I asked. "A one-bedroom apartment downtown. It's not much, but it's honest. I'm paying for it myself, working extra hours to cover the rent without Ashley's income." "And how's that treating you?" He laughed, but it wasn't bitter. "Hard. Really hard. But it's the first time in years I've felt like myself. Like the person you raised me to be." I thought about Carlos and his kids in my old house. I thought about the oak trees I'd planted, now shading a family that appreciated shelter. I thought about forgiveness, not the easy kind that erases consequences, but the hard kind that makes space for growth. You want to come by for dinner Sunday? I asked. I'm making pot roast. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then I heard him crying. Yeah, Dad. I'd like that. Good. Come at 6. And Michael? Yeah. Bring dessert. Something you made yourself. He laughed through his tears. Apple pie. Apple pie. That Sunday, Michael showed up at 5:45 with a slightly lopsided apple pie and red eyes that told me he'd been crying on and off all week. He looked thinner, older, but somehow more like the boy I'd raised. We didn't talk about the house right away. We talked about his job, about the divorce proceedings, about how strange it felt to cook for one person after so many years of marriage. We talked about my daily walks, about the book I was reading, about the Veterans Center where I'd started volunteering. It wasn't until we were eating his pie, which was pretty good, if I'm being honest, that he brought it up. Dad, I need to tell you something about that day. The day you brought the pie. I set down my fork and waited. After you left, Ashley laughed. She said something about how pathetic it was that you still needed validation from us. And I laughed too. But later that night, after she went to bed, I ate that whole pie. Every last piece. He paused, his voice getting thick. Because it tasted like home. It tasted like being loved. And I knew I'd just thrown that away to impress someone who didn't even like pie. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. That was your choice to make, son. And this is your choice to make too. What choice? Whether you want to be the man who threw love away, or the man who learns to receive it again. We started having dinner every other Sunday after that. Slowly, carefully, like two men learning to trust each other again. Michael never asked about the house, never mentioned wanting it back. He seemed to understand that some bridges, once burned, leave better foundations when you build new ones. One evening, about a year after our first reconciliation dinner, we were sitting on my apartment patio when he said something that surprised me. I drive by the old house sometimes. I looked at him. Yeah. Carlos has done amazing things with it. There's a garden now where we used to have that decorative rock landscaping. The kids have bikes in the driveway. There's chalk art on the sidewalk. He smiled. It looks like a home. Good. I used to be angry about it. About losing it. But watching that family, they make it look like what you always wanted it to be. I nodded. That house needed people who understood its value. We treated it like a prop, he said quietly. Like everything else in our life. Ashley was always staging things for her social media, and I was always trying to impress her friends. We never just lived. And now? He gestured around my small patio, at the simple metal chairs and the single potted plant I'd been nursing back to health. Now I know the difference between living and performing. 2 years after I reclaimed the house, the community center Carlos ran had grown into something beautiful. They'd expanded their programs, added job training and childcare services. Local businesses started donating equipment and time. I'd become a regular volunteer, helping with their financial literacy workshops and mentoring other single fathers who were struggling to balance work and parenting. One Saturday morning, Carlos pulled me aside after our weekly board meeting. Walter, I've got something to show you. He led me to a wall near the center's entrance where they'd hung a plaque. It read, "The Walter Mitchell Community Center, in honor of a man who showed us that sometimes the greatest gift is knowing when to take it back, and who to give it to next." I stared at that plaque for a long time, feeling something shift in my chest. Not pride, exactly, but a deep sense of rightness. Like puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. "You didn't have to do this," I said. "Yes, we did," Carlos replied. "Because what you did, giving us that house, it wasn't just charity. It was recognition. You saw us as worthy of something we'd never dreamed of having. His daughter ran up then, still clutching the book she'd been reading outside. "Mr. Walter. Did you see? You're famous." I knelt down to her level. "What do you think about that?" She considered this seriously, as only 8-year-olds can. "I think it's good," she said finally. "Because now other kids will know that grown-ups sometimes fix their mistakes." That evening, I called Michael and told him about the plaque. There was a long pause before he spoke. "I'm proud of you, Dad." "For what?" "For teaching me that love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go, and when to hold tight." "Which one are you doing now?" "Holding tight," he said without hesitation. "To the things that matter. To the people who show up. To the lessons you taught me, even when I was too stupid to listen." As I write this, 3 years have passed since I signed those papers to reclaim my house. Michael and I have rebuilt something stronger than what we had before, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation, on earned trust rather than assumed loyalty. The house on Maple Street is thriving. Carlos's kids are honor roll students. His oldest just got a scholarship to trade school. The community center has helped over 200 families find stable housing and employment. Ashley moved back to her home state after the divorce. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she's working for her father's insurance company now, posting significantly less on social media. Sometimes I wonder if she learned anything from what happened. I hope she did, for her sake. But that's not my story to write anymore. My story is about a man who learned the difference between being generous and being taken for granted. Between loving unconditionally and accepting disrespect as the price of love. I learned that foundations are meant to be strong, not invisible. That a father's sacrifices should be honored, not erased. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst behavior. The oak trees I planted in front of that house are taller now, providing shade for children who understand that homes are gifts to be treasured, not entitlements to be claimed. And me? I'm living in a smaller space but breathing in a bigger way. I'm surrounded by people who choose to be there, who value my presence, who understand that respect isn't a boundary, it's a foundation. Every Sunday, when Michael comes for dinner with dessert he made himself, when we sit and talk about everything and nothing, I remember what it feels like to be seen. Really seen. Not as a bank account or a convenience or a guest in my own story, but as a man who built something worth keeping. They tried to write me out of my own narrative. Instead, I became the author of a better one. I am Walter Mitchell. I am 68 years old. I gave away a house to reclaim my dignity, and it was the best trade I ever made. The foundation they tried to make invisible became the bedrock of something beautiful. And that foundation ain't going anywhere. Ever.